And we are live. A little bit after technical difficulties, but I'm so
We're
happy to
here.
have. Yeah,
We
we're here. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'd like to
um,
introduce Mike Miller, who's the vCISO at the Cyber Protection Group. Mike, thanks for joining.
no problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I love your postings on LinkedIn and social media. I ask you to come over and join the session here with the group because uh, I think we need more people that give back to the community and assist others to get into the space, which because it's such a great it really is such a great profession, such a great space, and there's a lot of difficulty for people to make the parallel move, the vertical move, and then join from other areas, other industries, and so on. But before we jump into that, maybe just a quick background how you got started, and who helped you along the way.
Yeah, no problem. So I mean, if you go way back, I did not expect to even be in IT. I hated computers when I was really young because I wanted to play video games, and every time I tried to load up a new game, it would fail, and I didn't understand the errors. So, but essentially, I just kind of fell into it. I started working with PCs, and I grew from there. Things would go wrong with the PCs, and I would try to tear them apart, fix them, and it was kind of trial and error. And from there, I
But
got into yeah,
so, Mike, just to kind of depil the onion in some of these responses. Um, so your first job was kind of a PC troubleshooting. Were you working for a
yeah.
business back then?
I was. It was a very small startup ISP back in the dial-up internet days.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's how I got my start in IT in general. And so from there, I tried to gain as much info as I could, and I kind of fell into. They said, well, you're pretty good at working on PCs. How about taking a look at some of these servers, or maybe some small tasks with different servers and so on. These were back in like the NT4, Windows 2000 days, and so I started working with the servers doing administration, and then one thing that really sticks out in my mind was we got hit by the Melissa virus way back in the day. And this is before there was a security mindset at all out there. And we found ourselves a pretty hard victim of it. Our services went down hard. And so I think that day forward was kind of a mindset change where, these systems are working, but now how can we um, act in a proactive way to kind of protect these and make sure that these servers are always available. So I would say for me, that was probably where security started.
Mhm. And you mentioned NT4. I think it was one of the first operating system that really had, kind of security controls based right into it. And because prior to that was basically it was just DOS, and you go and you turn on the system and you're
Yep.
off of the races.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. You're exactly right.
so how did you? Today we're very fortunate. We have a lot of resources available to us. People don't realize, back then you can just Google or look at YouTube and how to's to do these things. How did
Yes.
you gain that knowledge required to resolve and be proactive about cybersecurity?
Yeah, good question. So I used a lot of forums back in the day. Forums used to be really big. So I would join a lot of forums and follow a lot of forums and ask questions. And there weren't a ton of people that were ready to answer those kinds of questions. But I would join the forums, and then as I learned answers throughout the way, then I would actually try to contribute back to those forums. And so I would say forums. I did of course, internet research and so on, but a lot of it was just trial and error. A lot of it was trial and error. There weren't college degrees that you could get then for cybersecurity. It just wasn't a thing. So it was kind of just ad hoc, learning as you go. And I learned everything the hard way. Absolutely.
So talking about learning about everything about the hard way, um, if you go backwards and kind of trying to recall like a moment in time, we can say it was pivotal to your career. There's always something. Maybe it's
Yep.
like a new role or a new responsibility or a new project that you completed successfully
Yeah.
that made you feel like, wow, I've accomplished something. Do you recall something like that in your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked for a large supermarket chain, and I was working for them as a security administrator. And as a security administrator, I kind of wore a lot of hats. And this particular organization, this was a brand new team, brand new security team. And so we had to kind of start from scratch to build controls out. There was, for instance, there was no network segmentation, there were no policies, no procedures, no change control, no SDLC, things like that. And I kind of got a lot of that thrown at me. I like to say, my knowledge is a mile wide, but only a few feet deep in certain areas. But I
Hmm.
got to kind of expand that. So for me, I think it was at this point in time was being able to take this company from nearly no controls, and a lot of this was PCI driven as well, because of PCI compliance, and so there weren't really many controls in place. So I had to work with them wearing all the hats, the defensive side, offensive side, building out, vulnerability management program, building out the other things that I mentioned previously. So for me, that was probably pivotal for me thinking, okay, I'm no longer like just in IT. I've kind of assumed a security role, and I guess that's kind of when I started calling myself a security guy.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And what's interesting about this as well is that you mentioned you wore many hats, right? Um, I find that is kind of the best approach to getting knowledgeable and getting your feet wet. I find that it's not so much available today because everything is so structured. So you get hired to
Yeah.
do like a very particular job, and you're nodding because you know where I'm going with this. So
Yeah.
what do you suggest? Because there isn't like really, unless you work for a very, very small business, most large organizations have everything siloed. So you get in and
Yes.
you are
Very
very focused.
sandboxed in. Yeah.
Right, sandbox. That's a great
Yeah.
term. What do you suggest for somebody who wants to get their feet wet like that and get experience doing multiple things, and then also it's not just experience, also you figure out what you like, right? What do you suggest that people do?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So for me, if you're someone that's coming into the field, and there's a couple ways to look at it, right? So you have guys that are just in IT. There might be network administrators or systems administrators, and then you also have the influx of people coming straight out of college with looking for possibly cybersecurity degrees or whatever. So you have two different sets of people: people with IT experience and then people with no IT experience. What I would say is get yourself involved and try to learn. So for me, I would say the offensive side, learning a lot of the tools in the industry, just industry standard tools such as like Nmap, Kali, used to be called Backtrack years ago, or the tools with some of the very popular tools within Kali. Also understanding TCP/IP pretty hard, understanding tools on the defensive side, such as like Wireshark, learning what intrusion detection is. I pretty much took, I would say, about 7 to 9 months off in my life where I kind of paused and I just dove in. I took some classes. I actually took some SANS classes and studied those. And as you know from my posts, I've never been a huge certification guy. I've always been about the knowledge. And these were back in the days too, where I just plain didn't have the cash or didn't have anyone to fund my testing out of my certification. So I just tried to learn as much as I could. And so I would say for someone that's getting into cybersecurity, try to pick at least an avenue. If you're looking at offensive security, the penetration testing side, where there are so many jobs and so much opportunity on that side, set yourself up. You can get a really cheap AWS account or a cheap Azure account, and get a Windows 10 Pro system in the cloud somewhere, and build a little lab out on that machine. You have other avenues out there. Try Hack Me. So just try to learn the tools and the processes. YouTube, Google are my two best friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you about certification. So it's really interesting. It's almost like two sides of the coin. Some people are really big into certification. Some people are
Yeah.
saying they're not so useful. We're more big on knowledge. Um, and so degrees, right? Some people say there's a value in degrees in specific discipline, and some people say, well, there's not. Um, from your perspective, now you are a virtual CISO, meaning that you help. various type of organization. Do you really people, these companies care? How many certifications do you have? Do you get asked sometimes about your knowledge and expertise?
Yeah, good question. So I've never been stopped by not having a certification. However, I did have an early start in IT, so I think some of my knowledge prior in IT kind of helps offset, some of the certifications and so on. And I have no college degree. Um, I would say a lot of this is driven by the job descriptions and the HR departments and the recruiters and the people writing these descriptions. Because a lot of times you'll see, must have CISSP or must have your CEH. And what people don't realize is a lot of these are wish lists for these job vacancies that are out there. And what I always tell people is be confident and know what you're talking about. And on the side of the business, the recruiters and the people that are hiring, in my opinion, they need to do stronger technical interviews and put more weight on how deep these people's knowledge is in these interviews, and engage them that way instead of saying, well, you've got three certifications, you're good. Because you know um, I do respect certifications and people that are getting certified. I see it every day on LinkedIn, flooded with new certifications. I think we all see, and I think that's fantastic. But you also have to remember that the certification business is a very large business as well, and it's a very profitable business. And the those that are giving these certifications, they're making pretty good bank on this as well. But I think people getting into the field also need to take a step back and look at some of these job descriptions and kind of weigh their knowledge against these descriptions. So I also put it on the HR departments and the people doing interviews to be a lot more technical, because I know when I interview, previously, I would give very technical interviews, and I don't care if they don't have a college degree. I don't care if they didn't graduate high school. I care if they can help me fill a position that has a need, and that they have the knowledge and the mindset and the creativity and drive to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you have all the job openings, right? And then there's always talk about the lack of qualified workforce. But yeah, there's plenty of people looking for jobs.
Yep.
They just finished boot camps. They have experience and so on, but they find it difficult, to say the least, to get that initial traction,
Yep.
initial position, because I don't even know why. Because I guess they're not being hired for the job they want. They being
Yeah.
hired for the job they had, which I think is the wrong
Yes.
thing to do.
Yes, yeah. And I would say too, don't just think about the technical side of it. I see every day on LinkedIn, I see posts that say, well, I've done 15 job interviews and I failed every one. And so they think that they need to go grab another certification to maybe make that happen. But I say, take a step back, right? Take a hard look at your resume, make sure that your resume lines up with your skills. Learn from every interview, learn how you're communicating. Talk with the people who, if you don't land the job, use it as an opportunity. Talk with the people that are interviewing you. See what you did wrong. Ask why you didn't get the job, because you can be positive. That can still be a positive experience for you. But take a look at the soft skills, communication, things like that, rather than looking at that. I just need that one more certification, because in the end, it comes down to, in my opinion, branding yourself a little bit. Get yourself, an account on LinkedIn. Start contributing to posts, start commenting, start being of value. Let people see that. Let people see what you have to contribute, and brand yourself. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things you can do. Is networking, other in-person events or online, and reach
Exactly.
out to people like yourself who are now mentors, and ask the question. And it's not just about being in the interview; it's also about knowing people and making those connections. And
Hmm.
then we all know there are plenty of businesses out there, whether it's SMBs or non for profits, that are looking for help. So
Yes.
just call in your local whatever like non for profit organization and say, hey, do you need help with setting up maybe a perimeter network? Do you need
Yep.
help set up to harden your Wi-Fi? I mean, you're nodding because these things that you can do while you're looking for a job, and 15 15 job interviews is not so bad. I mean, it's, like, because you only need one, you
Yeah,
know?
you're exactly right. Each one's a step closer. And like what you said, volunteer, get yourself in where you can be of value to someone, even if you're not getting paid, because it's all a notch on your belt. That's all something you can add to your profile. And in the end, if you have, if you're a recruiter and you're looking at 100 resumes and all of these people have roughly the same certs, what have you done? What am I going to find in this stack of papers? To find that someone has done differently, or how do they stand out, from somebody else? Because it doesn't always come down to search. It comes down to, like what you said, giving back, volunteering, you know, helping maybe a local school out with, with running Cat 5 cable, anything that you can do to kind of set yourself apart from that other stack of, 100 resumes sitting there.
Yeah, and don't be picky. Beggars can't be choosers.
Exactly
If you
right.
don't land your
Yeah.
perfect job, you know.
One of the things I either posted or commented on the other day was, a lot of times I'm in a couple of Facebook groups or just general IT groups, and someone always posts, "Hey, I'm proud. I landed my first user support job," and and the sad thing is that that should be surrounded with celebration and support, because to that person, that's a great experience and a great start to them. However, it is the internet. So you have the people that are very negative. Well, you're going to hate user support, and you've seen that negative side. And what I always say is, if you want to get into security, even a user support role can kind of be that a good start in that, because you can teach users things that they can do to protect themselves. Phishing and so on. So no role is too small.
Yeah, and you never know what kind of connections you're gonna get.
You're exactly
Who are
right.
you gonna help, right?
The infosec community is a very small community. We keep passing the same people over and over and over.
Yeah, that's so true. And but I think the social media in general is just negative. And
Yeah,
also, I think the people don't realize that. I saw somebody post like a thing on I think it was on LinkedIn, where like everybody has this unbelievable title. Like,
yeah.
it's like
So
everybody's
many
got,
letters and acronyms. Yeah,
yeah, and people just, they overinflate their titles and what they've done and so on. And
yeah,
then when you look around, you get a feeling like, oh my God, everybody's successful, except me. But
yeah, yeah.
but it's not the case. We're not. People are not. And the same
No,
goes for, like, if you watch Instagram, right? So everybody's like get photographs beside Bentleys and traveling around the world, and you feel like, oh my God, like what am I doing
yeah.
wrong? What am I missing? So I think it's the same. You're laughing. It's just probably the
For
same in cybersecurity
for
because
for a
you know.
while, I finally took it off. But for a while, I kept my NT4 MCSE listed in my profile, just to throw people off. What's your skills? Well, I have my NT4 MCSE. 20 years.
It's good. That you probably get filtered out by a lot of like machine learning algorithms when they do
They,
scanning of resumes
they
and
see
LinkedIn
NT4
profiles.
like that guy's got to be like 70 years old.
Well, it could have been worse. It could have posted like COBOL expertise.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, so when you mentor folks today, um, what's the process like for you? Do you, um, what kind of struggles do these people face? I think we talked a bit about those, but more specifically, um, what do you say if you can pinpoint the one thing that can make or break somebody, uh, and create that success that get over the
yeah.
first initial hump?
Honestly, it's confidence. So, I made a post here 3, 4, 5 days ago, and I literally got about 250 inbox messages because I happened to mention on my post, hey, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help mentor you. And 95% of what I got was, I'm really struggling. I've been trying. I keep getting rejected for jobs. And when I'm seeing these inbox messages, they feel really down on their luck. So what I'm trying to do is kind of give them kind of that, what a good friend would do, kind of pat them on the back and say, "Hey man, no, you're one step closer." And it's staying positive, staying persistent, and then going back and saying, "Okay, let's look at your resume. What are we doing wrong here? Let's talk about how you're interviewing." I talked to one person that actually said that, for every interview that they didn't get the job, they like mouthed off. They went back to the people who were interviewing them and kind of like, digitally yelled at them because they didn't hire them. And I'm thinking that's the wrong approach. You have to be positive because there's a good chance you're going to apply for a job 3 years from now that person who interviewed you is at this company you're applying for. Because as I said, it's a small industry. So, but it's the soft skills. It's confidence. It really is what it all comes down to.
Yeah, and I think confidence building is a process. It takes time, and
Yeah,
it's I think you gain confidence by by achieving.
yeah,
And right now, again, I think we're living in a great time where there's a lot you can do on your own. So, for example,
absolutely.
you can create a GitHub account. You can post some things there. You can even do something as mundane as like just taking a security product and writing, doing a YouTube review on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Just by using your phone, putting your phone in, recording. I mean, just brainstorming here, but you have to figure out what do employers see, potential employers see when they Google your name, because that's what
yes.
they do, right? So,
Yep.
and there's so much you can do like think outside of the box in terms of what can you do to promote yourself.
Yeah, I did a few years back, geez, probably 7 or 8 years ago. I did I guess you call it a hacking video where I took Metasploitable and I used just tools that I had, Nmap, Kali, Metasploit, things like that. And I did a video. I went live and I played the most corny music you could play. And I
Do you
actually
remember what it was? Do you
I don't
remember?
remember. I don't remember I don't remember what the song, what the music was, but it was the most corny music. And this is before I knew how to like do, voice and things like that. So I went to Notepad and I would type out, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. This is what I'm seeing this vulnerability. So next, I'm going to go to Nmap and I'm going to type this. And I'd minimize Notepad and it's all live. And then I'd go back to Nmap and I would do it and I'd bring Notepad back up. So anyhow, I did like a 15-minute video, but then I put that. I think you can still find that on my LinkedIn profile somewhere. But I put that out there and I did walk through a whole series of things. It really was to help other people out. But then, over the years, people see that and they think maybe, hey, this guy knows some of these tools, and I think
Yeah,
that helped as
and
well.
I love your online presence. There's something very authentic about the things you post. And again, this is something that anyone can do. I mean, there's only a fraction of the people that are on LinkedIn and that actually post. They can even, for example, you can take your journey of finding work and keep track of that online, where you post like like some thoughts about the interviews you had. I mean, there's just so much you can do. And again, like I said, your particular presence online is really amazing. And again, I think people are you're not flamboyant, or like you're not posting like funny like cat
Yeah,
videos or whatever. You're just
just trying
basically
to help.
posting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Even
trying
though
to
I have
help
no
people
no
get.
I like cats. I don't have anything against cats, but
Well, I
I'm
don't know
just
if you
saying.
saw a minute ago. Well, mine's
There we
back
go.
there, and I happen to have this in case it comes to the screen. So yeah.
I
But
guess that
yeah,
happened
I
before,
just
right?
try to help people, get through some of the same frustrations that I had. And I try to keep it positive. I'm not someone that's going to post negative stuff online, and I think that's another thing too. So I'll go back to branding yourself, right? Just like you said, if someone Google's you, they're going to see what you have out there. So I'm. I try to make my post positive, and I don't think there's anywhere and now people are going to go scour for it. But I don't think there's anywhere you'll find my past 10 or 15 years that I've posted negative. And I think that says a lot too. If you, even though you're in some of the toughest times, when you make a post on LinkedIn, and that's going to be there for a while. So be positive because in the end, you want to be that person. When you're trying to get employed somewhere, you want to be that person that people want to be around and spend 8 hours a day with.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's the human element.
Yep.
Somebody told me once that the way they value candidates is that if they get stuck at the airport, it's lay away, and if they
Oh
can
yeah.
hang out with the airports for 4 hours, and they're
Oh
not going to
yeah.
suffer through it. So,
Yep.
so that's the litmus test in terms of if they're going to hire it or not.
Yeah.
But you can find positivity in like the half glass full on in almost everything, including being rejected.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
you know, so I'd like to just in kind of the next few minutes, maybe
Sure.
What I find specifically is people are not aware what kind of roles there are in cybersecurity. So because I don't know if there, for example, there's programs that teach you how to become a virtual CISO.
Sure.
So
Sure.
maybe dive into like what is a virtual CISO? What's your role? When you work with companies, what are kind of the typical project you're working on? Maybe some of the great things about this particular role, and then maybe some of the things that you would like to improve about this particular role. Just
Yeah.
get a it's just a glimpse of what that is.
Sure. Well, and I'll take a step back. So for me, I think it's divided into three categories at the beginning. With someone getting into cybersecurity, I think, and there's more, but these are the three that I typically tell people. You have the offensive side, you have the defensive side, and you have the auditing side. Those three have been the biggest for me. So when I started in security, I was doing the defensive side. I then rolled over, learned as much as I could for the offensive side, and then I found myself getting into auditing, PCI, and so on, different NIST frameworks, things like that, SOC, and then from there, if you learn those three things, right? This is what worked for me. You learn those three things, and you're able to. So on the offensive side, you have teams that are building out vulnerability management. You have penetration testing, things like that. The defensive side, you have SOCs out there. You have tools for intrusion detection. It's stuff as little as endpoints and antivirus. Then on the auditing side, things that I mentioned, PCI and so on. So kind of wrapping those three things up. And if you take those three things and you understand the three of those very well, then from there, I think a management position or what they call the C-suite level is, kind of can I think that can be an easy path from you if you have the knowledge in those other things. Because, my goal is to be able to walk into a meeting, and I'm not going to be an expert at. Listen, I'm not a coder. I'm the first guy that'll tell you if I don't know something. So I'm not a guy that can code. I can't design programs and so on. So I'm not going to go into a meeting and act like I am, or even try to talk to their language because I don't know that. However, I do go into a meeting and I try to listen and understand, and having a broad background on offense, defense, and auditing, and understanding the pieces and the controls under those things, I think can really help kind of get yourself into a management position, CISO, later CIO, what have you. But you have to be able to kind of at least understand and have good conversations with the teams that you're going to be working
Yeah. So when you are getting projects, how do you spend like the first initial conversation, the first meetings? What it is that you're trying to achieve? I
with.
think that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think your role is actually has a unique challenges in the sense that you're um, you come in from outside in, so you're not necessarily
yep,
typically like a part of the business, and then you have fairly limited time to figure out kind of the lay of the land, the
yeah,
business,
yeah,
the actual business, what you need to protect, what are the assets, and so on. So there's a lot on your plate, a lot of ask,
yes, yes.
and then you typically, again, I'm assuming this is all my assumption that you get called sometimes when there's issues, there are issues and you
Yep.
have to resolve.
Yeah, so I try to keep it high level, right? So when I go in, actually, it's a recent project I was on, I went in and my first job is just to listen, right? So I interviewed probably 12 to 15 people on their team, and the number one question I ask is, "Hey, tell me if you can't sleep tonight, and it has to do with you worrying about something at work or you worrying about something going down, what is your biggest thing that causes you to lose sleep?" And I would ask this question to 10 or 15 of these people that I interviewed. And of course, they would all have different things. But in the end, I would kind of keep tally and keep track. In the end, um, most of those come around to just two or three things, right? And in these particular cases, it was, backups and, just continuity of business, servers going down, being able to, have hot sites out there and so on for replication. These are just small things, but it's really learning what people's pain points are, right? So I ask questions, I learn what their pain points are, and then I try to talk to them. And so if they come to me with a problem, I want them to also come to me with a problem, but then tell me what your solution would be, right? That's what I do. And then if I have 4 or 5 or 6 people coming to me with their problem and a solution, then we take these 5 or 6 solutions. Let's put these together and let's see what we can gain out of that.
So do you are these project based engagements, or these are continuous engagement? Do you, how does
It's
that work
Yeah,
typically?
it's both. So I've
Mhm.
done contract work for years. So a lot of these is I'll go in with one particular task. Maybe my job is to help them develop policies, procedures, standards, maybe for compliance. So, but the thing is, in this industry, you can't just write a policy and a standard and then put it in the cabinet and then pretend you don't have it, because there's liability there. If I create a standard for somebody and they're not following it, it's a huge liability. So in order to create these standards on some of these projects I go in, I have to talk to these teams and see what their idea of what their current standards are, at least that they think they are, what they think they should be, and then we look at for compliance reasons. Okay, this is what we have. This is what they think they should be, but this is what they need to be. So then we re-talk to those teams. So sometimes it's just compliance, looking at policies and procedures. Other times it's looking at I've worked on projects where they have yeah, endpoint management software that needs deployed to tens of thousands of machines. Well, they don't have resources. They've never done anything like that before. Basically, working with our teams, working with the resources, seeing what we can do to get through that. So it's really, like I said, it's really every project's different. There's not one that seems to be the same.
Well, it makes things interesting, and also I think you have a vast experience because you get to see various type of businesses and various types of issues, and you get to resolve these on a regular basis, which provides you like a greater insight aside of like just working on one thing. Do you find that I've talked to quite a few people that said that a lot of times it boils down to the basics, where there are a few things that companies need to do to protect themselves and they don't do it, and there's
Yes.
gaps in there. Do you find that's the case as well?
Yes, I do. I wrote an article here not too long ago called "The Human Firewall." I think it's on LinkedIn. But anyhow, I think a lot of times it comes down to the people, right? I think companies need to, and not to divert, but you look at ransomware. Ransomware is not going anywhere for a long time. It's a money-driven business. Uh, but if you look at most of the attacks, they come from simple things. It comes down many times comes down to a phishing attack that a user, clicks an email. So I think companies need to invest in their employees and their own business by maybe do more than a 30-minute security awareness training once a year, because obviously in this field it's not cutting it right now. So I think it's investing in their people. I call it the human firewall. And they could also do things like social engineering assessments, things like that, just to test how strong the human firewall in their organization is.
Yeah, and we're in this is October, Cyber Security Awareness Month,
Yep.
and talking about investment back into employees, that's something that's ongoing. As you mentioned, you cannot just do a one and done.
Yep.
Do you, if you have limited resources, right? Like companies like time, because it's all about making money and running, running the
It
business.
is bottom line.
What's
That's bottom line.
what can they do to, like what's the best bang for the buck for them to raise the awareness level with employees?
I think it's a great question. I think it can start small. If it's a small company, let's just say it's a 40 or 50 person driven company and they have an IT admin. Even things like a weekly or daily email with tips and tricks, things like that. I mean, there are so many online websites where people can look to see what's going on, or what are the bad actors doing now. So I think just if a new vulnerability comes out, or new something comes out that their IT staff should be aware of, if they don't have the money to invest in all kinds of training and proactive things, even just a daily or weekly email list of here's what happened this past week. Here's what we need to watch out for. I think it can start small.
So companies deploy a lot of technologies to I guess remediate the kind of the weakest link, which is the people element
Yep.
associated with it. Is there any particular technologies out there that you feel are exciting, that will elevate the kind of the security controls in companies that you find, or is it all uh, just noise, and there's always going to be kind of the next generation of something. Um,
Yeah, so there's no silver bullet. I wish there were, and for any company to say we're secure, is a lie, because if they're secure today, they're not secure tomorrow. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think it's and I talk about this. I learned this from SANS years ago, from one of the instructors. It's about defense in depth, right? So I like to use the analogy of, when you buy a house, you have a white picket fence, and when the bad guy jumps over the white picket fence, and you got the German Shepherd. So you get past the German Shepherd, you throw a piece of meat down, and you distract them. You get to the front door, there's a lock screen door, and so it's defense in depth. It's doing all kinds of small things. And this and when I talk, if I try to relate those small things, it starts with you know, user awareness training as much as you can. Good endpoint protection. A good strategy for catching spam. A good backup policy, and also, strong policies, procedures, and standards do a lot, because if you can put proper standards in place and policies, and then enforce them, not only have them in place but enforce them, that'll go a long way, because now you're holding your staff and employees accountable, for actions that they take.
yeah, absolutely. It's also all about culture as well. If there's a um, culturally, a more secure environment, and it comes from the executives to top down,
Yeah,
and everybody feels as a kind of a common goal to protect the business, that goes a long way as well. So, Mike, it's been a real pleasure. I love to just continue this, and I feel like we could probably do another half an hour, no problem. Just could keep on talking. Maybe we'll do this
absolutely,
soon. Um,
absolutely,
but what's the
anytime.
best? Yeah, what's the best way to for people to reach out to you for any either to get consulting services or just get some advice, mentorship, and so on? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, no problem. Honestly, my LinkedIn account, I'm active every day, and I would say feel free to reach out to me on there. Watch for some of my latest posts, and just contact me there. It's the best. And if I don't get back to you right away, I will, because my inbox does get heavy sometimes. But hang in there, I'll get back to you.
Mike, thank you very much, and thank you for the contribution to the cybersecurity community. Much appreciated. And I hope to maybe see you in person in New York City in one of the in-person events that's coming up
Absolutely,
sometime soon. And again, I'll personally keep following you on LinkedIn and otherwise. And again, thanks for sharing and taking the time
no problem.
to meet today. Much
All right,
appreciated.
all right. Take care.
Take care. Be safe.